This is From Anxiety to Love Radio, the show about undoing anxiety through A Course in Miracles and other pathways of love. Gain insights and tools to deepen your awareness of the peace that already exists within you. I'm your host, Corinne Zupko, author of the award-winning and best-selling book, From Anxiety to Love. Hello, my beautiful friend. On today's episode of From Anxiety to Love Radio, I am speaking with Jackie Lora Jones. I love Jackie, and I'm thrilled to introduce you to her. Jackie Lora Jones is a broadcast journalist, a certified clinical hypnotherapist, and spiritual counselor. Whether it's through her Course in Miracles workshops, her work in the media, or in private counseling sessions, she helps people worldwide transform their lives. You likely know her sister and brother-in-law, Cindy and Gary Renard. Like Cindy and Gary, Jackie has dedicated her life to sharing messages of love and healing. Jackie's really an example of someone who has given her talents and her gifts to spirit. And so rather than be a traditional journalist, Jackie's a holistic journalist and focuses on journalism that heals. Doesn't that sound awesome? We need so much more of that. Her goal is to shine a bright light on the power of spirit within all of us. So let's dive right in and listen to our conversation. Hey everybody, I am so excited to be here today with Jackie Lora Jones. Jackie, welcome.
Hello, lovely Corinne.
Yay.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be chatting with you today.
Oh, I'm so excited. Last time Jackie and I chatted, we were chatting about my book on her radio show, which later on we'll have to tell folks how they can listen into that. And so here now, I'm so excited to have Jackie on my show as a guest because she just came out with this amazing book that I will say some amazing things about in just a few. But Jackie, I'm wondering if you'd be willing to begin with just introducing yourself to our listeners and letting them know who you are and what you do.
Oh, well, sure, Corinne. Again, thank you so much for your kindness and having me as a guest on your podcast. And yes, I am a broadcast journalist and a hypnotherapist and spiritual counselor by trade. And I have a private therapy practice. I have a global therapy practice. I see people via Skype and FaceTime. And so I have A Course in Miracles students and everyone else as well from all different spiritual paths, everyone looking to maybe connect with their higher self and have an easier time here. And so I stumbled on A Course in Miracles in 1999. And Corinne, you and I have a similar story of our mothers kind of got us into A Course in Miracles. Yes. I found that so interesting when I read your wonderful book, which I've recommended some of my clients really suffering from anxiety. So it was just wonderful. But my sister and brother-in-law, maybe some of your listeners know Gary Renard and Cindy Lora Renard. And so the three of us have kind of just in our own ways are, spreading the message of A Course in Miracles. And so I have a True Forgiveness Teachings podcast on Blog Talk Radio. And Corinne, we're on episode 123 or something like that. I can't believe it. Amazing. But I just kind of felt guided to do it. And it's weird, Corinne, because I went to school for broadcast journalism and then also went to school for psychology. And I kind of get to combine both the things that I think I can be of service to the whole. And so, my website is jackie.news and all the information is there. I'm just thrilled to be here and share some experiences and, chat with you. So,
and it's so awesome that you brought up just that your mom introduced you to the course and your sister being Cindy and, Gary Renard being your brother-in-law, because I'm just, I've had Cindy on the show already and I feel like the family is in the house. This is so awesome.
They send their love. So they send their love to you and to everyone.
Oh,
house. Yeah.
I'm sending that love right back. And so this new part of your offering of love into the world is your book. It's called All Peace, No Pieces, A Course in Miracles Take on the World. And it's the Wisdom Series, Book 1. And I just want to begin by saying that I loved I love your book. I feel like, although it's not like a pocket manual, I feel like it's a really, really fantastic introduction to A Course in Miracles. It's clear, it's written with very practical examples. I just found it to be so digestible. So can you tell us what inspired you to write the book?
Oh my gosh, this is so interesting. I'm glad you asked that, and I will shorten this answer. But about a decade ago, I just had this thought that popped into my mind about doing a book series. And I have loved The Wizard of Oz. I know I'm not alone in that. People growing up with the Wizard of Oz. And I kept thinking in 2007 and 8, oh my gosh, this is the course. Like, Dorothy wakes up and she finds out that she's been home all along. And of course, many people know that, but I remember thinking about that, 2007 or 8, and I thought, I'm going to do a book series and use that, example. And lo and behold, as you know, Corinne, as most people know out there, some things don't happen in our timing.
Yes.
It didn't take me 10 years to write the book. The actual writing of it wasn't that long, but I had so much material gathered, material for 10 books that I thought, what do I put where? What goes in book 1? How do I do this? And I just kept turning it over just year after year. And lo and behold, it just really kicked in. And I was like, 2018 is the year my first book is going to come out. It was really as simple as that. And I kind of just put everything together. But to answer your question, it just was a thought that came in over a decade ago, do a book series. And that it was just kind of as simple as that. And then, so here we are today. And I just wanted it to be helpful, inspiring. I called it All Peace, No Pieces. It's a play on words in so many ways, because we really are. The eternal nature of who we are as being in heaven is all peace. There's no fragmented pieces of God's Son and everything. And one of my favorite quotes from the book that I used from the Course that I absolutely love, because it really kind of encapsulates what we're all trying to do here, and I think you probably know this quote, Corinne, but the Holy Spirit's function is to take the broken picture of the Son of God and put the pieces into place again. This holy picture, healed entirely, does he hold out to every separate piece that thinks it is a picture in itself. And so I thought, like your book and so many people out there helping us all put the pieces back together, not only in our own little individual experiences here, but all the fragmented sun, the contents of our mind, putting the pieces back together.
I just had this flash come through my mind of Humpty Dumpty, of that nursery rhyme. And you know how it says all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again? That's because we can't do it of ourselves. That's actually accurate. It's the Holy Spirit's job, just like you reflected in that Course quote, to
beautiful insight.
Yeah, as we hand things over and have that perception, healed, and ultimately to come back to knowledge that that's the Holy Spirit's job, not ours. It's our job to hand those things over and get out of the way. So I love, love, love that you have used The Wizard of Oz. It's funny because I have a number of Alice in Wonderland quotes in my book.
I saw that in yours. It's wonderful.
These stories are just, I love seeing the spiritual messages behind stories like these. And so when I started reading your book and seeing, your references to Wizard of Oz, it was just so perfect, because you're absolutely right. Dorothy has to go on this journey to realize that she's been home all along. She just needed to wake up. She had that power in herself the entire time to just click her heels and go home. So I love it.
Absolutely. And it's so funny, Corinne, because, she had the knowledge all along, and the Scarecrow says to Glinda, the good witch, but why didn't you tell her before? And Glinda says, because she wouldn't have believed me. She had to figure it out for herself. And doesn't the Course remind it, what isn't the power of our belief so strong. The mind's, and what you express so well in your book too is we have to shift our perception, because the mind's belief in us as an individual body and identity is so strong. It's hard to dislodge that, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. And that belief is so strong because we're essentially using the power of God that is part of us to dream, to miscreate, to utterly convince ourselves and forget our truth, to, who it is that we actually are. I love just everything about your book, and I can't recommend it highly enough. And I'm wondering if we could, since a lot of what I do, my message is about healing fear and healing anxiety, and obviously that's what the course is about too.
Right.
I'm wondering if you have anything coming to mind in the fear and anxiety healing realm. Now, I know that you've had some anxiety in the past.
I sure have. Not as much as my sister Cindy that she shared with you so beautifully when you did the episode with her, the podcast. But I have to tell you, Corinne, when I read your book and I realized, and even knowing from my sister Cindy, people that deal with that on a large scale, even my 2 massive panic attacks that I had, I just can't imagine. I commend you for everything that you had to go through and your quest for healing and then giving it over and your journey that you express so well in your book. But I remember in the early 90s, oh my gosh, I was I went somewhere, I was living in Chicago, and I was signing paperwork to buy our first condo before I was married to Mark, my current husband. I was married to a wonderful man named Tony, who we've been divorced for many years, 20 years. But I remember that I was going through a huge change. I was getting married. We were buying a condo together. There was so much going on. And we met with an attorney somewhere up on the North Shore of Chicago. And sitting at that table, something came over me. I got up. My palms were sweaty. I went to the door and Tony said, what is, I said, I'm having a heart attack. I mean, I literally thought I was having a heart attack. I said, you have to call the ambulance. I remember I couldn't get it out. It had never happened to me before like that. I didn't know anything of A Course in Miracles in the early 90s. But what was so interesting? There was something in me. There was a part of me that was watching myself have that attack. And I just sat there and I remembered, I can get through this. I can get through this. And with the love and of everyone around me and the people in this restaurant, where we were signing this contract and everything, people were so loving. It took me a while to come down from that. And I did. And I was in fear then that it would happen again. Well, it didn't happen again till the late 90s. Again, I'm shortening this a little bit further. In the late 90s, and I had been introduced to the Course. And I remember I was actually sharing an apartment in Los Angeles with my sister Cindy. And I was walking through from the bedroom to the living room, and I had a panic attack. I called my mother on the phone. I'm like, I again, which well, it's hard to put it into words, and anyone listening, it's hard to talk. You feel like, and I remember thinking to myself, you know what? This is not who I am. This is a form of fear. And I just kept telling myself, and again, I was early schooled in the Course, but I did know at that time that there were 2 parts to the mind. And I was trying to go to the other part of the mind. I switched a little bit to observer mode. And I was like, the only thing I could think of at the time, again, is remember there's another part of you. This isn't who you really are. This is not my eternal nature. And then my mom kind of talked me down on the phone, and I just remember, it's hard to put it into words, but when you switch, sometimes I've found to that part that knows you're the observer, you take yourself out for just a moment. I mean, did you find that a little bit?
I did. And This is a very interesting topic because I feel like the nature of anxiety can be so all-consuming that
Yes.
that it's actually quite a blessing to have that little, like, it feels little to me, that little out, that little opening into that observer mode. And I've had that experience a number of times. I can remember one time, one of my anxiety triggers was always health stuff. And I remember being in the doctor's office once and being so nervous, but yet something was, it was like I was watching myself. There was part of my mind that was just really calm and knew that nothing is wrong. It knew that without a doubt. And yet I was still experiencing all this physical, racing heart and feeling all nervous and panicky. So this observer mode that you're describing, I think, is really key. How to get there is the question.
Absolutely. And absolutely well said. And that's the hardest thing. And I have found I haven't had those two, just were my big ones. And so I haven't had a lot since then, but I would have what I would call on the low level, which we all have, this low level anxiety that can come up in anything, with our relationships, with job situations, with whatever it is, and I when I get triggered, I remember to say to myself, if this is helpful to anyone, I kind of thought by thought, I go back like, okay, here's Jackie having a dream. She's in an anxious moment, in a panicky. Okay, here's Jackie. Here I'm walking into the kitchen. I'm feeling stressed about this. I'm opening the refrigerator door. I'm just going to grab this ice water with lemon. Like, it might sound weird, but I bring myself very present, and I remember, okay, now Jackie's having a dream that she's having this. I don't deny anything ever. I don't. It's not about that, but it's kind of like shifting. You know what? Can I quote something from your book,
Sure.
Corinne, that I love? Like, and this is, I hope it's exact. It might be paraphrased, but I wrote it down. You say, when we are caught in fear, we must learn to shift our perception. There is nothing more satisfying than coming to recognize your eternal nature, which cannot change, grow old, or experience anxiety. And what that means to me, I just got a little chill.
Me too.
I just got a chill. That word recognize, I think what's been really helpful to me, and everybody has their own process, of course, when I'm very present and I'm saying, Jackie's having a dream, she's walking to the refrigerator, she's getting water. Okay, that's not the ego, okay? Because the ego cannot survive without judgment. So and we know we all have a false perception of who we are. So when you're in that observer mode, thought by thought, step by step, we can start to come out of it, And so when I get triggered, I say things like that to myself, like, the fear is not who I really am. Interesting. I'm having this fear come up about, am I doing things enough? Am I being helpful enough? Am I doing the right thing? For whatever it is in life. And so I always sit there and I'm like, you know what? This is the power of the Holy Spirit, the right mind, Corinne, because if we just have that willingness to look at it through that lens, which, how do we do it? We start where we are. When the feeling comes up, that's our red flag to go back to the mind. And then I thought by thought, just kind of by talking myself just through it and being very present, the Holy Spirit takes over. And that word recognize, you really do recognize and get in touch with that other part. It's amazing.
Oh, you said, I feel like I could pull out so many gems in what you just said. There's so many important things that you just stated. And I guess where I'll start is that what you're calling observer mode and the ways that you're noting really what's happening, kind of just naming what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always fascinated with how, science is maybe slowly catching up,
Right.
really slowly, catching up to these spiritual and metaphysical teachings. And just to go back to neuroscience for a moment, there's an expression that says, or neuropsychology, whichever field, I'm not I'm not sure, but there's a term called, or a phrase called name it to tame it. That when you name what's happening, when you're naming your intense emotions, that actually calms down amygdala firing, which is that fear center in the brain. Now, of course, we know that the brain, the body, this is all part of the dream, but that just is a little thing that stood out to me. And your process, I want to highlight that you said first, when you feel the fear, that's the red flag. And I think that that's the first step that we really have to sort of repurpose, because I know for me, when I would feel the fear, I would just start freaking out that I was having fear, and it would just make it worse. Instead, you're like repurposing the fear as saying, oh, hey, this is a red flag. This is the warning signal now to make a new choice and to go back to the mind, to go back to your thoughts. And instead of going down that ego rabbit hole and growing the fear, you're now reminding yourself of the truth. You're now reminding yourself that the fear is not who you are. You're taking it back to the level, the only level where healing can truly happen, which is at the level of the mind. So I love that suggestion to see the fear as that red flag and then to choose again, to go back to the mind.
Beautifully said. And I love that. I love that. Well, how you encapsulated that. And I love the name it to tame it. That's a new one for me. And it's funny. That is what I feel that I've done. And I did not know that term. So thank you for that. I mean, we know fear can't exist in the presence of love. We do have to repurpose the bad experiences. This is very different than denial, which I tell a lot of my clients, is we're not denying everything, but Jesus so brilliantly in the Course, the Holy Spirit helps us repurpose everything. We just give a different meaning to it. And it's not as threatening, is it then? Right. We're not denying, we're not repressing. We're just repurposing. We're giving everything a different meaning.
Yes. Yes, that's so key. And I just want to highlight again what you said about how this is different than denial. There's a part in the Course that talks about the proper use of denial, meaning it's up to us to deny the denial of truth. It's up to us to deny the error and to bring our minds back to the Holy Spirit. And so this is not the same as denial, because we're not trying to avoid or hide anything, including the fear. It's about bringing that fear, feeling it, and bringing it to the Holy Spirit. We're taking it to the light because we want it to be transformed. It does not make us happy.
That's right. That's right. Bring the darkness to the light. And, it's just the miracle, A Course in Miracles, and there's many, the definitions for it. It's a correction. And so we haven't sinned. We don't have to feel guilty about our anxiety, our depression, our fear. They exist just to convince us that we're a body, so that we stay focused on that. And the miracle is a correction, bringing us back to the mind, showing us who the dreamer is. And Jesus says in the Course, mistakes call for correction, not punishment. So one of the things I always try to highlight on my podcasts and teachings and just with clients is, let's be gentle and kind to ourselves. Let's remember that we're all in the same boat here, no matter what the ego tries to tell us as our specific thing. And fear can take many forms, as we all know, and anxiety in a guilt-ridden world here, right, is one of the biggest forms, and depression and all those things. And if we can just remember, okay, I'm shifting the purpose of my anxiety, of the depression, and instead of using it for the ego's purpose, I'm going to switch. And the Holy Spirit uses anything that's happening to me for awakening, in order to choose forgiveness. In order to go back to the mind, I can forgive what's happening to me in the world. That's where we start, where we believe we are. And then maybe when we're ready, we can then go back to the mind and forgive ourselves for dreaming the whole shebang in the first place. And then we can let the ego's thought system be replaced by the Holy Spirit's thought system.
Yes, that's perfect.
Wonderful.
Oh, that was such a great summary of what this is all about. And I also want to draw out that how you said before that the pain, be it anxiety, depression, whatever it is there to convince us that we are a body. And that ties into a thought that I had earlier in our conversation when you described that state of anxiety very well through just the way you were speaking with pausing, like feeling, like it's hard to get out. That reminded me immediately of what that experience is like. And the thought that occurred to me then was that pain is a great motivator. We can get very comfortable in, things being just okay. We can stay a little too comfortable there. And so when the stuff starts kicking up and the pain increases, that repurposing, we can let that motivate us to work harder, to be even more vigilant, to continue to take things to the Holy Spirit versus, trying to run away from it and hide it. So it really is a wonderful motivator. And what you said is absolutely true, that pain is there to convince us that we are a body. And I love then how you went on to say how important it is for us to be gentle and kind with ourselves, because I think we can so easily fall into that trap of saying, I shouldn't be feeling this way again. I'm regressing again. I shouldn't, And that is not kindness. That is just picking up a log and putting it onto the ego's fire and giving it more fuel.
Oh, great way to say it, and, as you said that, something occurred to me too about being kind and gentle with ourselves. I will, sometimes it will come up with my clients that they'll say, but I should be over this, or like this happened again. And I have two things maybe to offer that from experience and from what might be helpful with that is, I should be further. It says that egos shoulda, coulda, woulda, or I should not have this happen. Well, two things. One, remember a time when we didn't know there were two parts to the mind? Remember, there was a time where we couldn't look at things from the Holy Spirit's perspective, and we can now. That's progress. So there's a part of you that it now knows that you can look. Sometimes we don't want to, right? We're like, all right, I'm not choosing forgiveness right now, but I know I can. I know it's there. Once we get over that, but it seems so real. So that's one thing. So know that you've made progress when you can observe, there's another part to the mind. Okay, so that's, progress. And then the second thing is, it may look like the same thing over and over again, Corinne, but it's just more unconscious guilt coming up to be healed. And it takes sometimes the same form over and over or a different form. But I wanted to share with people, the ego is very clever. It sneaks in the back door. And part of its thing is you haven't gotten over this. Well, none of it has happened where we really are in the first place. So sometimes it uses the same images or experience, the same contents of the fragmented mind to make us think that there's no progress. So I always say, just beware and know that the ego again is thinking, telling you you're not making progress when it's just more unconscious guilt coming up to be healed, to be looked at differently, to recall the projection, whether it's the same form or a different form. If you're looking at through the Holy Spirit's lens, you're making progress.
I love those. I love those 2 points. Those are so key for this trap that we can fall into with thinking that we're not making progress. This is brilliant. I love it. Just again, that reminder that we know we've made progress because now we know there is another part of the mind. And then for things that seem to keep coming up. So when things keep coming up, it's just, unconscious guilt. We can then celebrate when things are bad because it's all coming to the surface. Yay. It's not staying unconscious.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, the Course is so big in talking about special relationships. And, we have a special relationship with anxiety.
Oh,
we have a special relationship with depression or whatever we have, and anxiety in all the different levels, as I don't need to tell you, and people that have had much more experience with it and have done research more than I have. But we just all have this low level kind of, anxiety when we think of what the world is, coming from the thought of sin, guilt, and fear in the mind. It's a terrifying idea to us that gets projected outward, And so we have to remember, gosh, now I have made my anxiety, my panic attack very special right now. The special relationship is really with the ego thought system. And if we can remember now that that's taking the form of our anxiety and being in fear, we can say, there's nobody coming after me. There's nothing to fear. And I remember that we didn't really separate. And my husband said something that is so interesting. It makes me laugh every time. And we want to remember to kind of keep things light, not because our experiences are light, they're heavy, but just to remember, oh my gosh, here I go again. Like none of us, when we're in the throes of something really big forgiveness opportunity, and certainly panic attack, or at our lowest moments of depression, none of us, we don't run around and go, oh, I'm really afraid I've separated from God. I'm not experiencing the love today. It's steps. We have to get there. But then sometimes I think of that and I think, you know what? I'm ready. I can go back and remember that I'm not separate. I'm loved. I'm not alone. And sometimes those thoughts are just so comforting, and we kind of walk ourselves back thought by thought, don't we?
Yes. Oh, yes, we do. That's such a beautiful way of putting it, walking ourselves back thought by thought. And, you touched on something that you mentioned in the book, what you just said about not really being, that belief in separation, not really being tangible in our awareness. And yet then when we go deeper, we can see that it is there. That reminded me of the part of your book where you talk about, we just said this, it's more unconscious guilt coming to the surface when there's stuff kicking up. And yet somebody might say, but I don't feel guilty. And I relate to that because for years with the course's teaching about unconscious guilt, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel like I did anything wrong. I'm not beating myself up or, anything like that. And so I'm wondering if you can speak to that because you address this in the book.
So that's so interesting that you said that, about the guilt. And a lot of people aren't on a spiritual path right now or anything. They're not even thinking, but I don't feel guilty. And that's what's so interesting because guilt manifests. Everybody feels anger, some level of being depressed, sorrowful, sad, anxious. But this unconscious guilt is just that, Corinne, unconscious to us. And I think eventually people do get to a point in whatever way. It doesn't have to be A Course in Miracles. It doesn't have to be this huge metaphysical realization. But they say, you know what? There must be a better way. And then we start to recognize, you know what? I don't walk around just feeling guilty. A lot of us, like you expressed, in the earlier years, you walk around, we don't connect it. But this is the power of the Holy Spirit. And that's what I would say to this, is that everybody has their own curriculum with the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit will guide you to, in the mind, the Holy Spirit is in the mind, not in the world, but will guide you in the mind, in thought, to remember your true nature. Now, that may take different forms for people. So even if they don't walk around feeling, or they're not guilty, they will connect with, I'm tired of being angry, or I'm tired of having conflict. I'd like to remove conflict. Boy, I would like to take care of this depression. Boy, I need some help for this anxiety. See? And again, it's just step by step. And then eventually, I think people in their own way will get in touch with an unconscious part of themselves, however that is for them. But the beauty of it is we don't have to worry, because the right part of our mind, everybody has the right mind, the wrong mind, and the ability to choose between the two. And it may happen in a way that's different for someone else, right? And so I think the minute there's a willingness to heal, that's when people start the path. And then they can start to get in touch with some of the secret sins and hidden hates and the secret dream in the mind instead of the world's dream. And again, that may look different to people. And so we never have to worry about that. We only have to know that we have to have the willingness. Right?
Yeah. Oh, that's so helpful. And that also makes me think of something else that you wrote in your book about changing your mind's default setting, which I feel like you just spoke to, which, we all come to that point, whether we're course students or not, of, I'm tired of this. I want something. I don't want this anger. I don't want this anxiety. There's got to be a better way. And that, in course terms, changing our mind's default setting is knowing that we can shift into right-mindedness instead of wrong-mindedness. I loved how you said that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's really interesting, Corinne. We're wired. We're wired to be just default to the ego thought system. One of my favorite quotes, two of them from the Course, I may be paraphrasing here a little bit, is, when we're caught in the world of perception, we are caught in a dream. We can't escape without help because all of our senses merely witness to the reality of the dream. So it's very difficult. We're wired in the ego thought system. That's why we need help from outside the system, from the decision-making mind that is projecting everything. If we can remember, the world is not being done to us. It's being done by us, not even as a body. The body's part of the projection, but as the one dreaming mind that thinks it's here. And so it's no wonder. This is why I always remind clients and course group, whatever it is, we just need to be gentle with ourselves. The kindness is of the right mind. True kindness, which is not seeing your brother as separate than you, seeing our shared interests of waking up from the dream, our shared interests of going home together, our shared interests in the eternal nature of who we are. And that's really kindness. And then that kindness, that change of mind will shift. And the form that takes to person A, person B, person C will be different. But Jesus says the body is outside of us and not our concern. That may be daunting at first, but it becomes a relief, because then we know we can be truly helpful. And whatever that form takes after our change of mind will be helpful to whatever it is out there on our screen. We don't need to worry about that, right?
That's so beautiful, Jackie. As you were speaking, you quoted in your book a Course quote, and it's one of my favorite quotes from the Course, and it's, "Nothing so blinding as perception of form."
Yes.
Oh, and can we relate? I mean, we can totally relate to that. Like, nothing so blinding as perception of form. It is blinding. And so I actually have a very practical question for you.
Okay.
Because news anxiety, like things that are happening in the world can really freak us out. And with this idea of nothing so blinding as perception of form, I mean, the news is all about blinding with form and not seeing, the truth behind it. So I'm wondering if you have any just practical examples. If somebody is sitting down, they turn on the news, which I don't really do anymore, and they see something that hooks them.
Yeah.
What would you say to that person?
Well, this is so funny that you bring this up. I majored in broadcast journalism at Indiana University, and I'll just share a quick thing, and then I'll answer it. It pertains to your question. I majored in broadcast journalism, and I write a tiny bit about it in my book. I was guided in 2000 and 2001 not to take the normal news route. Like, I was doing a morning show in Tennessee, and my producer was telling me I was set to go all the way, meaning, you've got the skill sets. You can be in this market in Tennessee. Eventually you'll get to a Dallas, a Chicago, a Philadelphia. Then you'll be national. You'll be, it's that whole track. Anybody listening that maybe majored in that knows that there's like this track or whatever that you can get on. And Corinne, something was guiding me. I thought, you know what? It's negative for me. I was doing reporting on fires and stuff like that, doing the news, doing this morning show in Tennessee. And there was a ping in my mind that was like, but you really want to do like helpful spiritual programming. I don't think you'll be able to do it. I think people must have thought I was nuts. when I didn't pursue that normal path. And part of it was because, and again, there's no judgment. It was just my specific guidance for maybe how I could be most helpful right here. And that would be to focus on, as we know now, the love and the forgiveness and everything that I've been doing, for the last decade. But I didn't pursue that route. And I have a very big connection to the broadcast medium. And I love to do it in a helpful way. So when I turn on the news, I remember, and this may sound simple, it's still a part of the projection. Now, the ego creates levels here, and this is more serious than that. And certainly everything we see on the news is very serious because the world is very serious, right? But if we remember that still that is in the screen of our minds, trying to distract us. Oh, but politics. Oh, but abuse of animals. Oh, but, right? There's all these things. And what does one of the 50 miracle principles say? There's no hierarchy of illusions. So it helps me when I turn it on, again, something triggers us. A politician, something about the economy, something about the stories being told. The fires in California, certainly we felt the smoke from that. Those of us that live here in Los Angeles, there's always a trigger, right? But guess what? All the triggers become one eventually because we learn to generalize. We don't generalize in form because we see different forms. We generalize in the mind, recognizing that's all a part of our projection. So I use the new, that's just a trigger. It's another red flag. Just like when anxiety's triggering in our body or fear's triggering, it's triggered. The news is another trigger. I say, oh, this is a red flag. I have to remember that this is a part of my projection. And guess what? Whether it's a low level or high level anxiety or fear, it's still not the peace of God.
So true. That's so helpful. That is so helpful. Seeing it as another red flag, another opportunity.
It's another opportunity. I know it seems like boring, but the ego wants things to be complicated. What does the Holy Spirit say in your ear? Nothing's happened. Why does the Course say God is? And then we cease to speak because nothing else is.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for that. That was so helpful. And I just want to add, because when you gave the example of, animal cruelty and seeing those images, commercials asking for money, or recently deer have been very active around where I live right now. And so, you see deer that have been hit by cars on the side of the road. And lately, every time I see, because animal suffering has definitely been a big trigger of mine, I've been going to the thought, let me not betray the Son of God, meaning nothing so blinding as perception of form. Let me not get hooked by the picture, and instead let me remember that nothing can destroy truth. Nothing. So I'm not going to betray the Son of God. I'm going to be most helpful by being willing to remember the truth for all of us and for those who temporarily aren't.
Corinne, beautiful. 2 quick points on that. Oh my gosh, you're nothing so blinding as perception of form. Of course, form is blinding because we're seeing what isn't there. Why? Because we put it there. Eyes are part of the body that were made to see form. The ego wants us to see form, what is not there. So for those that sometimes, it seems uncaring, but actually it's uncaring, the Course would say, to see things as not the perfect Son of God, like you said. And those images of the deer and the animals, again, we're not denying that in form that's awful, but when we bring it back and just remember, oh my gosh, Corinne, what you said so well leads me to that thought, like when we make the choice for the Holy Spirit, we make that for the entire sonship. Why? Because we bless the sonship with that perception. So we are really blessing the contents of our own mind. And that's how we heal. And the images of the deer and the things we see on the news are projections of the mind. When we make the choice for the ego, we make that for everybody. When we make the choice for the sonship, we make that for everybody. So we are helping when we see things properly. And then we'll be prompted to, okay, if we give money, it might take the form of that. If we say a healing prayer, it might take the form of that. Remember, the effect is just effect. So when we go to cause, we can be assured that we have the highest part of our mind and all the help available to us that we need.
Oh, I'm so inspired by you.
As I am by you.
Oh, Jackie, this is so helpful. I have loved our conversation. I can't believe we're about at the top of our time together already. I'm wondering, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave listeners with? Is anything bubbling up for you?
Oh my gosh. Well, you know what? I feel like we really are all in this together. And it's just kind of a cliche, but I just want everyone out there to know that they are so loved. They are so taken care of, and it's just a thought away. And when you find yourself in difficulty or in a puddle on the floor or in the throes of the ego, just remember that thought by thought, you can come back. And when you start to not feel guilty and you start to experience joy, there may be a time when you feel guilty for not feeling guilty, but that's another trick. And just remember to reach for the thought again and be in your process. And it's all going to be okay. It really will, because indeed it is okay in reality.
My heart is full. Everyone, this is Jackie Lora Jones, author of All Peace, No Pieces, A Course in Miracles Take on the World. Jackie, can you just share your website and your podcast one more time for listeners?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Well, sure. My website is just the www.jackie, Jackie, .news. NEWS. That's a nod to my broadcasting day times. So Jackie.news. And when you click on that, you can find my podcast, the True Forgiveness Teachings podcast on Blog Talk Radio, and my 24th Hour podcast. It just has all the information, all my information about sessions or whatever you need to know. Anybody can just contact me anytime through that site.
Awesome. I adore you, Jackie. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Corinne, thank you so much. I hope to see you soon.
Love, love, love you. Bye-bye.
Love you. Bye.
I loved that conversation, and I hope you did too. I have some takeaways, as always, from this episode with Jackie. Number 1, when we get stuck in the idea, I should be further along than I am, remember these 2 important points. First of all, just the fact that you remember that there are 2 voices, spirit and ego, is progress, even if you don't remember this right away. And second of all, what's surfacing is just another layer of unconscious guilt. There are no setbacks. Takeaway number 2, when you feel triggered, practice going into observer mode. This to me is kind of like mindfully paying attention to your present experience while witnessing it without judgment. Go into observer mode by naming what you're going through. Put words to the feelings. Anxious feelings are those red flags that it's time to choose again. Bring your mind back to the mind, and thought by thought, as Jackie said, work your mind back to the truth. Number 3. Remember, like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, you are safe at home right now and are simply dreaming a dream that you are separate from love. You have not separated from love, and you are wholly innocent. Now, before you go, I have to let you know about some really exciting upcoming events this month, March 2019. First, I'm co-teaching the Spring Clearing Retreat from March 20th to the 24th in the Hudson Valley in New York State. I'm teaching with my friends Jennifer Hadley, Lisa Natoli, and John Mundy. Instead of being all talk and no action, we are going to peel off layers of resentment, guilt, blame, and shame for a true letting go of the patterns of the past that keep repeating. We'll dive into A Course in Miracles, Kundalini Yoga, plus there will be plenty of time for massages. This is at a resort and spa. Find out more at FromAnxietyToLove.com/events. Next, on March 29th and 30th, join me at the Living in the Light A Course in Miracles weekend in New York City. I'll be teaching with award-winning singer and songwriter Netta Boyne and the author of 16 A Course in Miracles books in Japanese, Yasuko Kisaki. There will be a concert by Netta on Friday night. Saturday will be a day of healing, workshops, and voice liberation exercises. No, you do not have to be a singer. I'm not a singer, and I'm so excited for these. They're going to be so powerful. Come shine with us. All the info you need about these events and my other upcoming events are at FromAnxietyToLove.com/events. Thank you so much for tuning in. I love you. If you benefited from this episode of From Anxiety to Love Radio, someone else you know can benefit too. The biggest compliment you can give is to share about the show on social media and to leave a review on iTunes. Thank you so much for doing so. I read every single review. Now, if you are ready to take your inner work to the next level, pick up my book, From Anxiety to Love, anywhere books are sold, and sign up for my free crash course on undoing anxiety with A Course in Miracles. It's available at FromAnxietyToLove.com/crash course. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you on the next episode.